Now we're rolling. How are you doing today, Jake?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, David?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been a chaotic 24 hours for me without a bathroom. But like I was explaining earlier, we replaced our flooring in our bathroom and then the toilet and the plumbing and all that jazz. And that was kind of stressful, but it's all good now.
Well, you rolled up your sleeves, took care of your family, and got the job done. So that's awesome.
It's important. But the thing is like I've never replaced a toilet before, so like when you can go online and just watch videos on YouTube, and you can literally get a degree on things. It's interesting.
Well, I wish it was that easy with running for politics.
I was going to segue into that.
I've never done that one before, and there doesn't seem to be too many YouTube videos on how to avoid the the craziness in politics.
How did you get involved in politics? I mean, because you said you've never ran for office or anything before.
Sure. So I'm a business owner. I own Christian Insurance Group downtown Lansing. And I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my business and helping people in the community, just serving them with insurance and financial service products. And one of the things that really struck me prior to running, I was still not thinking about doing anything political wise, although I wanted to do something, was when the Joe Biden came and basically said to us business owners that we're going to have to force our employees and agents and people that work with us to get a vaccine or to get weekly testing or fire them. That was basically the three options that were before us. And, it really upset not just me, but a lot of the people who had heard about it that were working for us in our company. And so
how many employees do you have in your company?
Well, we have an interesting situation where we have a lot of people who are agents, independent agents nationwide. So we have over 1,000 contracted agents nationwide. And so long story short is I didn't want to get into a situation where I'm forcing people to do something that they don't believe. I'm not saying that like if you wanted to wear a mask or if you wanted to take the vaccine that you couldn't. But I just feel like, as an American and as a business owner, that we should leave that choice up to each and every individual person. And so I stood against the mandate before it was thrown out by the Supreme Court. Actually, I just told everyone in the company, I was like, hey, listen, I'm not going to force anyone to do vaccines. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's morally right. You guys are adults. You guys can choose what you want to do with that. And I left it up to each and every person. And so,
did you get any backlash for that?
No, actually, everyone was very supportive. I mean, again, the people who had a vaccine, or wanted to get one, they
could get one.
I'm not stopping them. I'm not saying you're fired if you get a vaccine.
Right.
But those people who didn't, maybe didn't trust the science all the way, or it wasn't fully proven out and fleshed out to them, and they felt that the risk didn't outweigh the reward of getting the vaccine, they could decide not to. And so that's kind of where I kind of put my little mark on the ground and said, stuff that. I mean, clearly there was tons of terrible things going on in 2020 with all of the lockdowns and the draconian measures. But still, I wanted to give the freedom up to the people that worked with me and not to be left up to the government. And I think there was a lot of people who worked at places that didn't allow them to choose, and they lost their job because they believed strongly enough, including our own military. I mean, we had people. Yeah. In our military who were forced to get the vaccine, and many of them, if you didn't do it, you were dishonorably discharged, you lost your benefits, a very sad thing. But I think people who appreciate the freedoms are very happy to work in an environment that, such as myself, my own place, and many others who stood up against these sort of draconian measures.
It's kind of a crazy thing with the whole vaccine discussion, right? Like, if you say that I am not for the vaccine, you're automatically equated to this like alt-right group, like you are othered in a sense. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that there's the mainstream media narrative that if you don't do what mainstream media and what the government tells you to do, then you are somehow inherently evil, or you're doing something that's hurting the greater good of the. I mean, that's how it was sold. As you may not believe in the science, but you got to do it for your common man and the good of society. And so yes, there's always attacks from the left, but I think more and more people are waking up and just realizing that, hey, we're America, and we have a decision. We should be able to choose if we want to take some sort of in my mind, some sort of experimental vaccine or not. And I think people respect that judgment. Even if you got the vaccine, even if you thought it's the greatest thing ever. I think most people realize we live in America, and at the end of the day, it still should be a choice with something like that.
I had a guy in here yesterday that I went to school with, and he was like, I'm triple vaxxed. And I'm like, oh, cool. Good for you. He never got COVID, and he attributes it to getting vaccinated, and which could very well be the case. Maybe he has the immunity now. However, like, I got COVID twice, and I was fine.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. Like, I had COVID before, and I recovered, and so now that I have natural immunities, I don't see even a incentive. I mean, I wasn't like 100% when the vaccines were first announced. I wasn't 100% against or for. I was kind of like, okay, well, this is something potentially good. Let's look at it and see. And then you hear just of the amount of time that it took to rush out these things, and so that's kind of what gave me pause for concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're a young guy. Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30. So a lot of people like our age, we're around the same age, end up getting myocarditis when they got the vaccine. So there's health problems that come with it for young men like us.
Yeah, I mean, my own father, he didn't have any heart problems at all, and I tried talking him out of it just because I was concerned, and now he has, I don't know what specific health condition related to his heart, but a heart murmur or something new, something that it caused. I'm not exactly sure. But it just goes to show that there is cause for concern, and also the way that the the secrecy behind the studies. I mean, we had Freedom of Information Acts requested to these companies, and they originally told the American people that it was going to take them 50, 60 years to release the information, and of course that was absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't take half a century to release your documents, and so
how long does it usually take?
Yeah, I mean, how long does it take to collect? I mean, you run a podcast. Some government entity said, "Hey, give us proof of whatever podcast you shot and the details behind it."
Right.
Would it take you 50 to 60 years? I mean, I know these are a little bit bigger studies.
This episode is brought to you by Red Bike Delivery. This delivery service operates only using battery-powered, eco-friendly transportation. Red Bike Delivery is there for all your delivery needs, whether it's dinner for the family, flowers for your partner, or new houseplants for your new collection. Red Bike Delivery will gladly deliver those and everything in between. So what are you waiting for? Check out Red Bike Delivery on Facebook or Instagram for more information. Red Bike Delivery, because there's only one Earth.
But right, I mean, the thing is there's no way it should take most people's entire lifetimes or close to it to release documents. And so that was just another one of those cogs in the wheel that just made a lot of people kind of question the whole thing, I think. And so I think transparency is important for anything. I mean, if you're asking millions of people to take something, you should have the proof to back it up. Yeah. And like I said, I wasn't one of the people who's an automatic no for me. It was more or less it was these steps that kept leading up to more and more questions. And
I mean, I guess devil's advocate, people would probably say that they were just trying to rush to come up with something that would, help fight it. And even though that they didn't have the studies available, they were probably just trying to make a difference.
Well, sure. I mean, if that was their argument and that's what they said, and just to play devil's advocate, because like that's the thing, right? And so that's why I was open to the idea of taking the vaccine, because it wasn't like I wasn't 100% on the never ever take a vaccine ever crowd. It was more or less just I think I should have the freedom of the choice to decide. And the more they almost pushed me to get it without, in my mind, seemed to be adequate proof that it's safe. And the more questions surrounding it, the more it made me not want to get it. And I think I've talked to other people, just, everyday people, they tell me the same thing. They're kind of on the fence about it, but it's almost like the more someone tells you do it, you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, why are you trying to get me so hard?
Especially when it's the government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How close were we to the government enforcing people to get vaccinated? I mean, obviously with the military, they forced it. But as far as like everyday people who work for corporations.
Well, I'd argue we already crossed that line. I mean, we had, multiple people in healthcare sectors. We had people all across the nation get the vaccine after a band-aid. Well, I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
you had a jab in India to get the vaccine.
The Fauci ouchie.
That's right. So we actually had Biden come along and give an executive order saying, hey, you have to do weekly testing. And these aren't, it's not like just push a button, click 1, 2, 3. That's how you test for these things. They shove these Q-tips straight down your nostrils. It's a very intrusive thing. Who wants to do that every single week for the rest of their lives? And so many people reluctantly got the vaccine. It wasn't, in their mind, they said the President of the United States, the executive branch of government, says, do this or get weekly tested or you're getting fired.
Yeah.
And so there was I don't know the exact numbers of how many, but I could imagine hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who at that moment in time said, well, I guess we have to do this. We were on the fence. We didn't really want to, but I can't lose my job and I don't want to be jabbed prodded every single week to get tested. So no, I think that we already crossed that line, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of people who had to make that difficult decision. In fact, I do a lot of interviewing at my company as well too, and stay on the pulse of the interviews. And a lot of people who came to us for jobs were people who quit because, quoting, things like I just didn't want to get the vaccine at all, and they were forcing me to do it. So
wow. Yeah, that's one thing. I work at GM, and that's one thing I was worried about is being forced to get the vaccine. And I know that there was a lot of coworkers that felt the same way. They had talked about, and they have a lot of seniority like me. I mean, I don't have a lot, but I have like almost 9 years. So, it's a decent amount of time. And to be able to say, like, if you're going to force me to get the vaccine, I'm not going to work here anymore. I'm going to quit and go do something else. That's something. That's huge.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of my coworkers that said that.
It is. I can't imagine being at a place, and that's why I wanted to run my business like how I would imagine if I was working for me, I would want to be treated in this environment. And so basically I try to put myself in the shoes of my, the people working with me is, am I going to force them to do something that I wouldn't want to do? And the answer to that is no, right? And so I can't imagine being in a position where I'm a provider, or even a sole provider. I don't know your specific situation, but anyone, and be told, hey, do something that goes against what you believe or get fired. It's just
yeah.
That's not the America that I grew up in. That's not what I see as a free country.
So that's what catapulted you to want to run for Congress.
Oh, that was
7th District Congress.
7th District, but that was a major prod. But no, I wasn't thinking about running for Congress at that point. I was thinking, I don't know what in the world am I going to do. Am I going to go and stand out in some of these protests? Am I going to? I mean, I don't know. I didn't know what was going to happen at that. But that was one of those feelings that just really frustrated me with the whole system and the whole situation. And so, but I still hadn't thought about running for politics because let's be honest, who in the world wants to go Washington and go deal with a bunch of I mean, we all have heard politics is dirty, but holy cow, it is probably the most scuzzy industry of anything I've ever been involved in, and it's
you haven't even really been involved too much.
Oh man, yeah, no, just from what I've seen. I mean, let me start with this. So for those of you who don't know, yes, I am running in Michigan's 7th District. There is an August 2nd primary where you can vote in the Republican primary. There's only 2 of us in the 7th District, myself and another gentleman named Tom Barrett. And so we're running to see who basically can represent the Republicans in the general election. And I collected 1,424 signatures with my team. Now, a lot of people have heard of these governor's candidates. There was 5 of them who got thrown off the ballot for what seems to be very questionable reasons. And there was I can tell you firsthand because I've seen the whole Board of Elections, the people who decide who's on the ballot or not, and the State Board of Canvassers, there was not enough time. Anyone and everyone who was involved in this process would tell you.
How much time was there?
Well, I got 29 hours and 40 minutes.
Holy
cow. I got a notice, 29 hours and 40 minutes. I got the actual key that allows me to see what the errors they said that they were throwing me off the ballot. So they gave me basically just slightly over 1 day, including time that people normally sleep and stuff like that, to prove to the state board that I should be on the ballot. So it's almost like guilty until proven innocent. So
Why did they give you that time limit?
Because the whole thing was rushed. It wasn't a time limit that was just for one person. It was, here's the meeting, and you all have to attend. So all the governor's candidates, anyone and everyone who they said you're not going to be on the ballot, this was your one chance to prove otherwise. Okay,
gotcha.
And so we and my wife, my family, my campaign staff, everybody on the team poured through every single one of those 1,424 signatures. Now, again, we only had 29 hours and 40 minutes to look through all this and all the errors. So they gave us a list of all the errors with the error codes. And the error codes, many of them were what they call a dual jurisdiction issue. And now there is nowhere in state law or state statutes that requires the State Board of Canvassers to disqualify a signature because they added extra information. They just arbitrarily decided to do that in my case. And so a dual jurisdiction they list as an issue that is if a client or if a person who signed the ballot wrote down like their city and their township, well, therefore they could be saying that they live in the city or the township, so the whole signature is crossed out. So we had just over 300 of my signatures were thrown off for
Holy cow.
what they call dual jurisdiction. Now, the interesting thing is the state of Michigan's own definition of a dual jurisdiction is a city and a township, not a county. So over 100 of mine were a city and a county. So they already went well above their actual own definition because a county is not a municipality, and their definition is a municipality is a city or county. That's go Google it too. That's what a municipality is. And so they threw off things that people wrote the city and the county as well. So they threw those off. Now, what else is interesting is my primary opponent, on every single one of his ballots, all of his ballots, he wrote Charlotte, Carmel Township. Now,
Every single one?
every single one had
How many did he have?
Well, roughly the same amount.
Okay.
I think roughly 1,400 as well, somewhere around that. So roughly we turned in, I don't know the exact number, but about the same amount.
Okay.
Every single one of them, he had Charlotte, Carmel Township. Now, the interesting thing is I also had signatures with Charlotte, Carmel Township, so city and township. Now, the state board said that it was okay for him to make those errors and then threw mine with identical issues off the ballot. So I'm wondering why. Why did this happen? And so I dig, and I'm trying to figure out. And then I realized there's a connection between the State Board of Canvassers and my primary opponent. Looks like they're good buddies. And it turns out Norm Shinkles, the chairman of the board, this Board of State Canvassers, turns out he actually endorsed my primary opponent, signed his nominating petition, and then threw me off the ballot. So really weird stuff, right?
Holy cow.
Really weird stuff. And I don't know if his guilt was getting to him or what, but the weirdest thing ever is I don't know why in the world a State Board of Canvassers guy who threw you off the ballot would then call you. The guy called me after I announced I was running as a write-in and basically was asking me not to run. So I don't know what's going on there. It's a really interesting situation. Some weirder things, though, is that those were, there were several hundred of the dual jurisdictions they threw off. They also threw off like actual errors. So I brought 63 errors to them. These are actual mistakes they made. Like they said, oh, there's no signature at this line, and clearly, as clear as day, there's a signature. So I don't know if they just went too fast or what. They also said things like, oh, there's no registered voter, so we crossed off that one. Well, we literally showed them that they were wrong. There is this registered voter. We went to Michigan's registered voter file. So long story short, they made 63 errors that we showed to them, and they threw off hundreds more that they called this dual jurisdiction, right? We showed them the errors, and anyone who is interested can actually go on YouTube and type in State Board of Canvassers, and they can actually see these live because they live stream them. So you can verify what I'm telling you. When I showed, my attorney and we had a chance to present. We showed all the errors.
Well, I'm sorry. What was the name of that? I'm going to...
State Board of Canvassers live meeting.
I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Yep.
State... Oops. Live meeting?
Yes, and maybe you can throw this up on the notes when we're done with the shot, because I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head. But there's a specific date because they have live meetings every so often, every few months or whatever they end up doing.
Okay.
And so there's a specific date to it pertains to this, but I'll get you that date here in a second.
Okay.
But so bottom line is we presented the proof to them. Remember, we only had 29 hours, 40 minutes. Everyone on our team, my family, everyone. My own wife was up till like 3 or 4 a.m. like digging through all of the signatures to try to find all the mistakes they made because we were only 52 signatures short of being on the ballot.
Oh my
And so we showed them 63 actual mistakes in that 29 hours and 40 minutes. And then there was more after because we didn't have enough time to find them all. There was more mistakes after that. But in that short period of time, we showed them that amount, plus all of the dual jurisdictions. That is absolutely ridiculous because the bottom line is people signed a nominating petition for me because they wanted a chance to see someone new on the ballot, right? That's what the democracy, the system of voting that we as people agree on is we want to see new people, new ideas on the ballot. We may or may not vote for them, but at the very least we want to have a chance to research them more and then potentially choose them. And so those people that wrote Charlotte, Carmel Township, and their signature didn't count, but it was okay for my primary opponent, they're really being disenfranchised, And anyone who wrote in their county as well as their city, their intent was they wanted me on the ballot when they signed the nominating petition for me. And so I think they're really disenfranchising all the Michigan voters who wanted a choice, right? So anyway, long story short, we proved all of this to them, and they didn't even look at it. You can see that on the meeting, they just asked Norm Schinkel, is the chairman of the board, asked the State Board of Canvassers director, can we even rule on this? Do we have an ability to rule on it? No, we don't. All right, all in favor of him going off the ballot, and it was just done like that. No looking into any of the proof, no looking at anything we said, just gone. And so we got completely illegitimately kicked off the ballot. But guess what? Jake Hagg's not a fighter, or is not a quitter. He's a fighter, and he's not quitting. And that's why I'm running as a write-in. I'm not going to give the State Board of Elections and these people who cheat people off the ballot and rob the voice of Michiganders. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of winning. And so I've already announced as a write-in candidate. It's pretty cool. You can just write in my name underneath Tom Barrett's name on the 7th Congressional District. You just write it in, fill in that little box next to my name, a little bubble, and that's how you vote for me. So if I can educate enough people on how to do that, and they really like my policies and stuff like that, I hope they would vote for me. But yeah, that's the story of Jake Hagg versus the Michigan Swamp.
That is insane. That is, you would think that'd be a conflict of interest, that you couldn't be on that board if you endorsed an opponent or somebody who's running. You
would think. It's like, hey, I like this guy so much that I'm going to put my own name, my own recognition, this guy's a serious guy. I mean, he's the state, he's the chairman of the 7th District, GOP chairman as well. So he's really well connected politically. Norm Schinkel's also running for state rep in Michigan, so he's very well connected politically. But the fact that he trusts Barrett, he likes Barrett enough to put his own name and endorse him, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's absolutely unprofessional that you would be the one chairing the board that makes the decision on if your buddy's primary opponent is on the ballot or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he's obviously taking a concerted effort to eliminate his opponents.
It seems to be that's what it looks like to me. But the reason you got to think about why. I mean, and that's the real reason we got to boil down here. So I don't know how much or little you know about politics or not.
I'm not in it at all.
Okay, so long story short, I'm running as what you call an America First candidate, and it just means that I believe we should take care of Americans first. I know it seems like a logical thing that any politician should say, but you'd be surprised. Most politicians seem they would rather send billions and billions of dollars around for the whole rest of the world.
Yeah.
Even while Americans are suffering, gas is $5, groceries are inflating. Mothers and fathers can't find infant formula for their little infants. But yet we continue to send billions around and help everyone else around the world. So they are strong. They are scared in the Republican Party of America First candidates like myself because the people really like us, the voters. We're much more. If you ask just a random side by side of any random Republican voter, hey, would you rather have the guy who's America First, going to take care of people here in our own country, or the ones who keep sympathizing? And I'm not that I don't sympathize with this world. It's just I realize as an elected official, my responsibility is first to take care of my own people in my own district. You ask them, would you take care of people here and send the money here, or send it overseas? I mean, at least 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you, no, we need to do it here in our own people. Yeah. We're hurting really bad. And so
I think a lot of people, when they also hear Republican, they associate it with like Trump and January 6th. Like Republicans are like these evil, like wanting to take over democracy type people. And so then we need to vote them out. that's at least that's my perspective of it from like the way other people on the left talk about Republicans.
Sure.
Especially when you have President Joe Biden going on Jimmy Kimmel and he's saying, "Oh, well, those Republicans. Did you see that interview?" He's like, "Those Republicans, they're not just normal Republicans, they're MAGA Republicans."
Yeah, I think it was meant to be some sort of insult, but it's funny actually. The people who are Republicans on the right who foul this whole thing is like they almost wear it as a badge of pride. Like, hey, I'm a ultra mega Republican. It sounds like some sort of really cool title. But the idea that it's somehow a bad thing to want to put America first, the idea that it's somehow that people don't want this, I think it's silly. I think you can't really argue. What is the opposite of America first? It's literally America last. I mean, you can't, who wants to sit on that side of the aisle? Well, apparently, there's a lot of politicians that do, and it's both Republicans and Democrats. It's not just Republicans. It's not just Democrats. There's both political parties, especially mostly the politicians, and we all know it. We all see it. They'll promise you the world when they are wanting your vote.
Yeah,
They'll say,
absolutely.
"Oh, you're hurting so bad. Let me change. Let me do something for you."
Yeah.
But then when they get into power, they do the exact opposite. And I think,
well, I think maybe those are things that they would like to do, and obviously they're just saying as much as possible that would get them elected. But when they get in office, they're kind of constrained a little bit. They're not able to pass what they want necessarily because they have people opposing it. And
well, yeah, there's
more red
leadership
tape to it.
and there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes, but I still think it's no excuse. There's lots of examples I could point to of people who would literally, I mean, like they say they're going to. I mean, it's not just a matter of they're constrained. I mean, we see votes go like complete opposite way of what they even ran on and promised. Mm-hmm. I think the only politician who's kept his promise in the last year and a half is Joe Biden when he said that he was going to end all drilling and he didn't care if it caused the gas prices to go up or not. He did that. He said he wasn't going to drill on federal land. He said he wasn't going to drill. He was going to stop all drilling on federal land, all offshore drilling. Period. It was all going to end. All the drilling was going to end. And look where we are now. In the first day of office, he stopped the Keystone Pipeline, XL Pipeline, and he's continued to attack American energy independence ever since. And now Americans are paying this huge, I mean, we're literally, our gas prices have almost tripled since he's taken office. And so he has fulfilled that campaign promise of ending American energy independence.
It's kind of funny because you pulled up in a Tesla.
Yeah. Well, I actually pre-ordered that Tesla in I think it was 2015. So
Whoa.
2015, 2016, whenever they first announced it, I was like, that is so cool. It is like I was actually kind of like in the market because I didn't want to buy a nice German car or something like that. I wanted what's the nicest American car? I don't know, made in America. What's the nicest, coolest car? And it's definitely the Tesla. But I also have a GM, a very nice Chevy Colorado, which kind of gets me done for the work and stuff like that too. So, it's my wife and I kind of both swap vehicles just depending on the need. But it's ridiculous, right, to have gas prices that are so high. And it's ridiculous. Like, I've been blessed. I have a business. I own a business. I can afford an expensive car. But most Americans, they can't, right? They these politicians say, oh, you don't like $5 a gallon of gas? Well, just buy a $70,000 electric vehicle. That'll solve all your problems. And most Americans are like, well, I can't even afford Dollar Tree anymore because it's turned into a $1.25 tree. And so the problem is we have politicians who promise to take care of their own people here in America, and they get there and they do the opposite.
Yeah. What kind of things do you plan on changing when you're elected?
Sure. So, let me start with the things that I think all of us can agree on, and then I'm going to go into something that I think it might even be controversial on the Republican side. Not every Republican says this, but let's start with the basics here. We have to get into office, and we have to stop. I mean, we send so many billions and billions of dollars all around the rest of the world. I mean, we're hearing about it every day. 40 billion here, another 30 billion there. And Americans are suffering so bad. So I want to put in policies and I want to vote things that have come across my desk that are stopping these sort of fundings, because I don't think we need to take care of everywhere else around the world while we have a $30 trillion deficit and while American people can't even afford to drive around anymore because gas is so high. So we need to turn that around and take care of people here at home. But So what do we do? So okay, so we're stopping. Let's say, for example, let's just use a round number. Let's say we ended up stopping, not just myself, but we had enough America First guys in Congress to vote for actual change and to stop all this. So let's just use a round number. Let's say $100 billion we could save every year. Okay, well, let's do something like, let's put $50 billion aside and refund different programs at home, and use the other $50 billion to start paying off this $30 trillion debt. Something like a common sense approach, that because we have to pay down this debt, we can't just keep growing it. Why? Because who's our biggest debtor? Well, it's China. Or whoever owns all of our debt is China, right? They're our biggest lender. So we're literally taking out more debt, giving it out, and then paying back interest to China. Does that make any sense to anybody? It doesn't make sense to me. So start paying down some of that debt, which if we don't, is going to keep forcing us to raise our taxes, because we the people have to still pay off this massive debt. So we have to pay that down, and then use some of that other money to fund certain social programs. So, well, I am very pro-life, and that's the opinion that I stand behind very strongly. But I realize the one of the things that I think we need to do more is take care of women in these crisis pregnancies. I know there are certain cases where women are, there are a lot of cases where they're like, I really would like to have the child, I just don't feel like I can financially afford it. Well, I think we should do more to support women, especially with the big overturning of Roe versus Wade. I also think some of these programs should be spent and sent for taking care of our seniors. So I work in the senior market. I work with a lot of seniors, and many of them are low income. So you have a senior who he or she literally gets maybe a $20 raise in their Social Security, and then their Medicare Part B goes up $40 a month. So they're told they make a gain, but they actually lose money because their bill goes up more than their increase. And then that's not in counting. And I'm not kidding you when I said the Dollar Tree is now $1.25, but a lot of my customers, that's their main grocery store. So no, it's not 8 or 9% inflation. It's 25% inflation when you go to a Dollar Tree and now everything you buy is $1.25. That's real inflation right there. That's an impact on, well, I guess I'm just going to have to cut out and eat 25% less food every week.
Well, I don't feel that anybody's necessarily slowing down on buying things. Like, I feel like people are continuously getting in debt.
I think that might be true of the middle class and even the low middle class, but I think I'm talking poor people who, and I work with many low income families, and I'm telling you, $800 a month budget, $600 a month budget in total.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
they're in low income subsidized housing because they can't afford anything else.
Yeah.
And when you take someone who their main store is Dollar Tree to buy all the essentials because it's the cheapest place they can still get their essentials at, and that price goes from $1 to $1.25, that is a real impact. And they literally are just cutting out the amount that they're spending because that's their budget, right?
Yeah. So what could be done?
So again, if we're stopping the amount of money going over,
how could you change that though?
Again, I'm one voice in Congress. There's multiple of us that need to move, but we need more America First people, and I need to go to Congress and educate other potential legislators, right? Other people who maybe prior weren't voting that way and such. But whatever I can do to get the word out that, hey, listen, we need to put the American people first, and the people at home are really hurting right now. Let's stop taking care of the rest of the world and start taking care of our own people. Yeah,
we just recently sent over like $40 billion to Ukraine, right, for support.
Yes. So that's you look at that, and there's a lot of Americans who question that, and they don't want. Of course, they don't want Putin running the world. Nobody wants Putin to just take over.
I don't think he's going to.
But
from what I understand, he's not doing very well.
I would hope not. Nobody's saying we love Putin or anything like that, but we love the American people. And we realize that we can't be involved in every single conflict around the world, and there's only so much we can do.
Especially when we just pulled out of Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah, we have, if you want to call it a pullout, it was more of a horrible retreat where we absolutely failed on the way out, and it was embarrassing around on the world scene. It was absolutely embarrassing how it was performed, But anyway, yes, we just left Afghanistan, and now we are here in another conflict, and we are spending American taxpayer dollars to fund it. And again, it would be different if we were all in Rolls Royce and we were all driving the fanciest cars. We all had $1 million mansions, and life was great. But it's not for many millions of Americans. They're suffering it, and they're suffering more than they've ever seen. And look, our stocks are being absolutely decimated for people who are able to invest.
Yeah, I have a 401k, and my 401k tanked.
It's more like a 201k now, isn't it?
I think I lost like $40,000 within the last year and a half.
It's sad.
It is sad.
It's really sad. And look, regardless, you like Trump or not, if people who are following along and listening. Trump did say if that guy gets elected, your gas is going to be $5, $6, $7 a gallon. The stock market's going to crash. The housing market's going to slow down. I mean, this guy literally predicted everything that we're here facing now. And so I want to see I really want to see all Americans winning at every financial level, right? Whether you're the lowest income or the highest, anywhere in between. I want America to win again. And I'm so tired of seeing the whole rest of the world win at the cost of Americans. And I know, specifically with China, this country, China, used to be a country that manufactured just chopsticks and trinkets, very basic stuff, really cheap stuff. And now it's the world's largest economy, capable of producing the most sophisticated electronics, medical equipment, even fifth-generation fighter jets these days. Wow. This is crazy because once upon a time, our country, specifically in Michigan, and Michigan's 7th District, right in the middle of the heart of our heartland, this country used to produce everything that mattered. It was made right here. And it was made by people who could afford to take care of their entire family on one good paying income and put their kids through college and buy their own home and get the best pensions and retire comfortably as well. But now, and I'm telling you firsthand, because I've been to China, I've spent 3 months at a time in China, on and off. I speak Mandarin Chinese. I'm very well versed. Yes, I'm very well versed in our economic adversary, China. I know firsthand. I've seen how much win, and I don't have a hate for any of the Chinese people. If I was a Chinese elected official or official in China, I would be cheering on what American politicians have been doing because it's good for my country. But it's not good for the Americans here.
Right.
We no longer have this one income. I mean, you work at GM, right?
So my wife does too.
Your wife does as well.
Yeah.
These jobs, they get shipped overseas, and now we have two families, these two parents rather per family. They're working in service sector jobs. These jobs have no hope and no future. They're barely getting by, and they've seen 9% of their take-home pay robbed from them by inflation. And it's just sad because I really want to see America to be a prosperous nation again. And quite frankly, since there is a GM plant literally right outside my office, I talk to a lot of people from GM. I also work with a lot of GM retirees, and many of even the traditionally union Democrat households who voted mostly Democrat for pretty much their entire life are telling me we are so sick and tired of the party that takes its orders from global corporations that has been selling us and our jobs out for decades, and they are coming over to the America First movement, and it's quite an exciting thing to see.
That's one thing that I've always wondered is why, like the UAW, for instance, or any union automatically supports the Democratic Party no matter what. And without knowing the policies of the politician or knowing what they plan on doing, they endorse those politicians always. They endorse Joe Biden.
It is really interesting, isn't it? That they would endorse Biden when 85% of Americans say they don't like the direction the country is going today. Yet these UAWs, these different organizations are automatically getting behind them. I can't answer that question in full detail. I only wonder why more both union Democrats and in any union households, rather Democrat or Republican, are continuing to vote for the politicians who are standing behind their jobs being sold out from under them. And it is a sad thing. It is a sad thing when we as a country, we had the economic power and we were the envy of the entire industrialized world, and everything that was important, that was made, that mattered, was made right here. and now it's all made in China. And so, no, we really need to, as a society, as a people, be more cognizant of who we're voting for. And, hey, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. You lied to me as a politician once. You went and did the opposite. Well, I'm not going to reward you with my vote again. We need to be tough on that. We need to actually pay attention to these. And so, if you vote for a Democrat one time and then they get in power and then they start voting for stuff that's literally, okay, so Tom Barrett specifically, I have a bone to pick with him. He's not a Democrat. He's my primary opponent, of course. But he voted 6 times in a row against a new GM plant being built right here in Michigan's 7th District.
The battery plant?
The battery plant. There's 5,000 new jobs, GM jobs. These are good paying jobs.
Why would he vote no?
Well, it's interesting. You look at what his reasoning for it was, and he would rather use the money that was going to go to these GM plants, and instead of voting to build the GM plant, he wanted more government jobs instead. Now, this is a supposed Republican. You would think, okay, no, a Republican would rather have a American-made company with a big battery plant and 5,000 more jobs here. But no, but that's the America Last type of rhino Republican that is still left over in the Republican Party. And so I think that the Republican Party is going through a transformation. We are gaining support of middle America. We're getting support of those people kind of in the center, and the old establishment type doesn't like that.
What kind of jobs would he create for government? What was?
I think there was some jobs related to construction work and stuff like on the roads and stuff. But the point is,
Well, what does it have to do with GM?
Yeah, well, the point is exactly. Well, there's a bucket of money, and they're deciding where the money goes. Oh,
okay.
no,
because of the tax breaks.
Different. Well, not to the tax breaks, specifically this incentive money that the state level can vote for of where the money is going to go. He specifically would rather have the money go to these different various government jobs than to a GM plant, and he voted against it 6 times. Now, Alyssa Slotkin is the Democrat on the 7th District, She is all for it, which is interesting that I am the only Republican who is saying, why in the world are we turning away a big, beautiful GM plant that would have produced 5,000 jobs, and instead we're going to buy our batteries from China? Because that's where they come from, these lithium batteries. Why do we want to buy from China and make them wealthy, Tom Barrett, instead of our own people here in our own country?
Well, and not to mention the fact that GM's a huge corporation. They can build a plant anywhere. They could go to Detroit and build a plant. They could go to Ohio and build a plant. They could go to any part of the United States and build a plant. Why wouldn't we want it here, right in our community, where we're providing 5,000 jobs when we have impoverished communities, people who need good paying jobs? People complain about that all the time, that there's not career opportunities, not jobs where you can earn a 401k and have good benefits. Why wouldn't we want jobs like that?
I agree with you 100%. I am all for that plant being built. I hope it gets built. I hope that
they're working on it.
Well, it's awesome. It's really sad to see that he would continue to vote against it, though.
Yeah, that is sad. Especially somebody who works at GM. That's obviously the future. You pulled up in a Tesla. More and more people are going to electric vehicles. It's the future. It really is. Even whether you want it to be or not. Whether we start drilling for oil here, or we start mining for batteries, that's the future.
I believe it. I believe that there's going to be many more electric vehicles in the future, sure, but I didn't believe in making the American people suffer in the meantime because of it.
I agree.
I'm not going to close down. If I had the choice and I was sitting in Biden's shoes, it would be the opposite, right? Like Trump did. He was for American energy independence. We were actually independent, energy independent. It was an amazing thing. And as soon as Biden got in power, he punished all the Americans because, yes, people want to move towards electric vehicles eventually, but he's cutting off, he's tearing off the Band-Aid for many Americans when the scab, there's not even a scab there yet. It's still a fresh wound. We first need to.
How's our infrastructure for electric vehicles? Do we have one?
I think
that would be sustainable.
I don't think there's any way you could sustain the entire electric infrastructure in America. Especially, Tesla, of course, they have more infrastructure than any other company currently, as far as charging stations and service centers related to specifically electric vehicles. Now, Ford and GM are on their heels. They're putting a lot of pressure. That's awesome. They're all American companies. I hope they all do wonderful.
What happened with GM and Ford and changing the amount of time that it was going to take to switch over to all electric vehicles?
From what I understand, and I'm not the most well-versed person on electric vehicle batteries, but I think it's a lack of the amount of lithium that can be mined and brought in to create these batteries.
I know that they met with President Joe Biden, and she was planning on switching over, I think, by like 2035. And then after meeting with Biden, she agreed that she was going to switch over by like 2030. They talked about it on the Jimmy Kimmel.
Oh, on Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Best source for news.
Oh, no, Biden did.
Yeah, I saw that. I think I saw clips of it. I didn't see the whole thing, but I think I saw clips of it. Yeah, I don't honestly know the whole situation with what Biden said on Jimmy Kimmel.
He said he met with Mary Barra, and she agreed to drop the suit against Elon Musk and to go like fully change over to electric vehicles by 2030, I believe.
Interesting. That's great. That's 8 years away.
I know, it's scary though.
It's interesting, but we're still 8 years away, and so I don't think any American should. And even if they hit their most optimistic, and I don't know often when the government ever announces that they're going to get a project completed at a certain amount of time, that it ever actually happens in that certain amount of time.
It did with Afghanistan.
Yes. When it does hit time marks, then it's an absolute disaster. So if we get to a point where we can drive around in beautiful electric cars, and they're as cheap as a used Honda that some people could only afford, these cheap little, these cheap little foreign cars. If it gets to a point, though, in all seriousness, where people can afford the vehicle and they can drive it just like any other gas combustion engine, then and it just has the same amount of range, and it has the same infrastructure, and it's just like filling your gas, because even right now, I love the Tesla. It's a beautiful car, but it takes me, in the fastest case scenario, if I have an empty battery and I go to a supercharger, it's like an hour long. That's way more than a. What's
the range
gas station? Well, it started at 310. You have degradation over the years, just like a cell phone battery that you keep plugging and charging. And it slowly drains. I think I'm at like 280 now.
Okay.
Of range.
How much does something like that cost when you want to swap out the battery? It's probably thousands of dollars.
I don't think it's a very it's from what I understand, it's a very costly thing. There is battery warranties, and of course that the companies, the manufacturers put on them. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't want to pay for a new battery myself. I've heard it's quite expensive.
Yeah, I could imagine. What are your views on the Second Amendment and what's going on today, and how the Democrats are wanting to I guess, come up with more restrictions and background checks and all that stuff?
Sure. So I think it doesn't really matter what my personal opinion is. It matters what the Constitution says, and specifically shall not be infringed. It means exactly what it says it means. And so that's what I intend to do, is not infringe it. We have a Second Amendment in place specifically because, and I think it's pretty fitting to talk, July 3rd, the day before our Independence Day, about where we were as a country in 1776, the point where we actually had to revolt against the British government, overthrow them, and here we are with America now. So the Bill of Rights was instilled in place shortly thereafter because the American founding fathers realized that, hey, we were literally, if we didn't have guns, we would still be British rule. As simple as that.
Yeah.
Paul Revere's ride, the British are coming, the British are coming. Well, they weren't coming to do hunting with them or clay shooting. They were coming to take their guns away so that these people in 1776 could not defend themselves from a tyrannical government. And so that's why it was written in. Now, I hope we never, ever have to use it for that reason, but that's almost like an insurance policy, right?
Right.
I hope my house never burns down, but it's nice to have homeowners insurance in the off chance it does, right?
Yeah.
That's how I view guns. I view guns as an insurance policy, and in a worst case scenario, we have to defend our liberty. That's why it's there. So I would be very against restricting guns. Now, it's interesting, though, the schools specifically, because something has to be done. We have, these schools with 20-something doors and one less left prop open, and we have some horrible event, and it's just terrible. So I would be in favor of, I've seen, and this is another thing, is like the amount of money we send over to Ukraine, to not just Ukraine, to just any and every country. Ukraine's the country of the day, but there's always a country that's in massive need of American help, and we send billions to. But why not spend some money on, there's many veterans. They're fully trained in how to properly handle a gun. Give them very good mental health checks. give them, make sure that they're competent and capable, and then give them a job. Maybe even two of them, a job of protecting each and every school in America. That would be less expensive than the amount of money we sent to Ukraine.
Do you know Tim Kennedy?
I think I've heard the name, but I don't know too much about him.
I was listening to him on Joe Rogan one day, and he was talking about, I think he has a company that develops like security for businesses and whatever, but he developed security for schools, and he said to implement his program, it was like $400,000 per school. And the way he would do it is he would create landscaping around the school, so like people couldn't have access to windows. It'd be a way to like nobody could climb through a window because there'd be like trees or bushes or whatever there is.
Sure.
And then every door would be locked, and they'd probably have like an alarm on it. So like if somebody went to go prop it open, it would sound an alarm, kind of like a fire alarm. And then you would have a 1-point entrance. And when you walk into that 1-point entrance, you're locked into a room that, who knows, maybe has metal detectors, has cameras, and then you can't go into the school until you're cleared by somebody.
That seems like common sense to me.
You wouldn't even need somebody with a gun. Maybe a security guard in a room surrounded by monitors or
maybe
something.
Somewhere near the front of that one single entryway would be smart to have someone with
it. Might not be a bad idea, but at least it'd be something.
Absolutely.
It's more than what we have now.
Absolutely. I think, like I was saying, we have these schools now with 20 different doors. One gets propped open, and all of a sudden we have these horrible things. So a single entryway, I'm 100% in favor of. We need to secure our schools. They need to be protected. They are children, after all, and we need to protect them.
Politicians have people with armed guards, or banks. Why aren't we protecting our kids?
It's interesting. It's always politicians who are shouting that, you can't have a gun. You're not allowed to have a gun. Only we are. We're important enough. You don't need one. So no, we do need to secure our children. We need to secure, and I believe with the armed guard, I believe that is a great idea, or two.
Yeah.
And I think we have many veterans who can't find jobs right now, and all of them are trained to operate a weapon. So why not give them a job if they're open to it, and put proper procedures and proper security in place of these schools to protect them.
One thing I follow a couple Democrats running for different positions here soon, but when the Uvalde shooting happened, they were all up in arms, and they were saying, well, this is why we need to get rid of Republicans and vote Democrat. They were using it almost as a catalyst to promote their platform. I found that extremely disturbing. And I don't remember where I was going with that. But the thing is, I guess what's disturbing to me about that is the fact that they're using their position in that moment to try to take away somebody's rights.
Well, I think we should stop politicizing these horrible events, and the news should start talking about the actual things that are happening. Like, how about the mother that was shackled and held off from saving her child, and then broke out of those shackles?
Why isn't that talked about?
Why isn't it talked about? And then broke out and then went and got her and saved her children. Or how about the police officer that came and was turned away himself from saving his wife that was in that building? Why are these type of topics not talked about? Why is it the fact that we're only using this to politicize it and as some sort of Democrat or Republican talking point on both sides instead of the real issues at hand, right?
Right. The last question I have, we're almost an hour in. So free speech, what's your thoughts on that? Like silencing people and censoring people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if we, so you look at Twitter, I think that's the biggest. There's lots of different places, but Twitter specifically, because it was very controversial. We had, of course, President Trump was kicked off, and now Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you saw, he was kicked off. Yeah. And people just question this, right? Because it seems to be that it's more targeted towards conservatives. And now we have the left that is very concerned about Elon Musk taking over Twitter, and they're finally saying the same thing. Well, wait a minute, what if he turns down the reach of some of the, somebody controls on the conservative side, turns down the reach of the left, and now it's a concern of the left, where it's been a concern of the right for many years. And so I think I'm in favor of making sure we have an open, free space to communicate, because our country and our ideals, like I'm sure you and I don't agree on everything politically, but here we are sitting across the table at a podcast chatting together.
Absolutely.
That's what America is. That's what makes us great. Our ability to communicate, get our ideas across. You might say something that pops up in my mind, and now I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's a great idea, where I hadn't thought of it before, and vice versa, right?
Right.
I might have said something to you, now you're kind of thinking about it. So that open discourse allows us to communicate and kind of form better opinions as a group, as opposed to being isolated and separated and not able to communicate. Because if all social media is just an echo chamber, we're really not learning. If we're all only Democrat or all only Republican talking to each other, we're not really moving the needle on any sort of bipartisan ideas getting across.
No, not at all. And if you aren't willing to talk to those people whatsoever, just because you don't agree with them, or they did something, like for instance, I talked to Ryan Kelly. I don't know if you. I think your wife reached out to me, and she was like, "I seen you talk to Ryan Kelly. Can you talk to my husband?" And or talk to Jake. I don't think she said you guys were married, but the thing is, like, people like found out I talked to Ryan Kelly, and they're like, "Why would you do that? Why would you platform that guy? Like, he's a piece of shit. He went to the January 6th and tried overthrowing the government. Why would you do that?" And I got all kinds of backlash from it.
It's interesting.
And it was just a conversation like this. Like, it's not like we're diving deep into politics. I'm asking you some basic just questions, and you're just talking.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's good to any listeners who you get backlash from talking to me for. I will just say to them that I am glad that I am invited onto this podcast. I think it's been a very respectful place. I think we share good ideas. You might not agree with, like I said, your viewers. You might not agree with everything that I have to say.
But that's okay.
That's America, right? This isn't a third world dictatorship where the government says that only the viewpoints of whatever they say goes, right? We need to have this open discourse, and I encourage it. We're both respectful. We both hear each other out. I'll hear your viewpoints out. You'll hear mine, and hopefully we can actually understand each other better. And I don't want us to be divided as a country. I really believe united we stand, divided we fall. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it just separates us when we can't have those conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I appreciate you very much, David, for bringing me onto the show. This was a very great experience, and I'm very happy I came on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And you dropped some bombs on here. You dropped some names. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting, and that's one thing. I think that it's a very interesting situation to be living it firsthand, because everyone always hears politics is dirty, but man, oh man, is it really nuts over here in Michigan. It's crazy.
That's almost corruption at its finest right there.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody is always fearful of when they go to vote, is that, does my vote actually count?
Yeah.
And that would prove right there that their vote does not count.
Yeah, I think not even their vote at this. It's their ability to even have a voice, to have a choice, right? And it is sad, and it doesn't matter really whether it happens to it does matter, but I don't care if it was all Democrats that got thrown off the ballot or all Republicans or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that it's happening, right? Yeah. It's the fact, and so specifically, I think it was a very unfair, terrible situation. But I'm continuing forward because I want to expose it. I want to continue to bring it to light. And this happens to, I'm sure I'm not the first person that this has happened to. I'm the first one speaking up about it from anything I've seen, but I'm sure that there's other people who they just get thrown off and they, I'm just a regular guy or girl. What am I going to do about it? And they just give up,
Right.
So no, we're not going to do that.
All right, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
You always have a voice here, so.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.